Hey there, gaming fans, enthusiasts, and Anthem fans. This is Jesus from Jesus Gaming My Podcast, and today's episode is actually an encore about the last week episode of the segment of Anthem. I think that for me it's important to highlight that Anthem refused to die, and I hope that with this episode being kind of a repetition of that segment could really send a message. Of course, I'm taking some time off, so I decided to have this encore as a proper uh dirt to fill that hole that I'm gonna be having if I haven't think about anything else to do while I'm away from doing content for I think the first we're gonna have of February. So thank you so much for your support, and let's go. I have been trying to make some Anthem content like I was doing before my hiatus and the early days of this YouTube channel when I was just Jesus as part of the MGG family. I made a full streaming of a full gameplay of Anthem by BioWare's Electronic Arts BioWare Anthem. Um, I want to make a recap of what the games is about, how the development went, how the launch went, and how BioWare's attempt to actually fix the problems and the complaints that many gamers have been having for the game until it was announced that the game will no longer be updated, not gonna be having more new content, and the fixes that we're going to be explaining in this opportunity didn't happen. But why I am bringing all this, I will tell you later. All right, as a recap, Anthem is an online multiplayer RPG game developed by BioWare, the same people that work on the Mass Effect games, published by Electronic Arts, and the game was released on February 2022. February 22, 2019. Yeah, so many things have happened since 2019 to 2024. I'm mixing up gears already. So basically, it's a game that combines the person shooting with RPG roles and action role playing game elements in a continuous open world, which visually to me is one of the big aspect of the game, the graphical open world, uh, where you're flying your mecha suits that are called javelins, and pretty much you can explore the whole world. The setting in Anthem is in the planet Coda, littered with advanced technology relics with harness and omnipresent energy known as the Anthem of Creation. Unstable relics can spontaneously terraform the section of the planet, mutate wildlife, change the local climate, create portals, and spawn monstrous creatures. Extremely unstable artifacts can envelop a significant area with destructive energy, storms, and creatures, rendering them barren and deadly. Such events are known as cataclysm. Human knowledge about the relics is limited, but it's believed that they were created by a godlike race called the Shapers, who abandoned the planet a millennia ago for unknown reasons, and the Anthem and the Shapers are revered by some of the source at all life. So, who are you? You are part of the crew of a famed freelancer named Haluk, who rallies an army of freelancers to enter the Heart of Rage and deactivate the Xenothafts. Among them is you, a rookie undertaking the first mission. Accompanying them is Faith, Haluk's cipher, and wife. Shortly into the mission, all the other freelancers are killed, prompting Faith to call a retreat. With the player evacuating a wounded Haluk against his wishes, the resounding failure caused people to lose faith in the freelancers, whose ranks are decimated. 2 years later, the player has settled in the Fort of Tarsis, a frontier area between the Heart of Rage and Anthem, the Bastion's capital. Partnered with a young cipher named Owen, they make a living completing modest freelancers contracts for the locals. Owen aspires to be a free license despite his psychic ability being a hindrance to pilot the Javelin. So pretty much this is the introduction of Anthem. Anthem was originally started being developed right after the release of Mass Effect 3 in 2012 under the supervision of Casey Hudson, the executive producer of the original Mass Effect trilogy, and internally it was codenamed Dylan by BioWare. The working title was Beyond until 2017, and then the game was renamed as Anthem. Basically, what it was in public knowledge is that BioWare pretty much started from scratch with Anthem. Basically, they didn't have any strong ideas during the development of the game, and they all just wanted that the game was an action genre game that players could play in a co-op mode, basically like Mass Effect and Dragon Age. So there were so much attached for both titles. Obviously, working in a total of 7 games, of course, there should be some attachment. So basically, the Anthem concept was a mix of robotic enhancement, pretty much motivated by Iron Man, and many of the mystical aspects, including the anthem and the unnatural things going on in the planet, were based on the Bermuda Triangle conspiracy and history. And that's where all the hazards and dangerous creatures came into the idea. So basically, 2 years later, after the game was started being developed, they find some overlapping as the BioWare team was already working on Dragon Age Inquisition and Mass Effect Andromeda, and taken to the fact that there were some big departure from the company that basically affected the progress on the development of Anthem. The team continued to struggle, obviously, with the Frostbite engine. We take that in note because we're going to be talking about Frostbite a little bit later. And jumping from 2014, we're heading to 2016 to 2017, which basically BioWare was kind of forced to make some final decisions on Anthem despite the game was still not ready. There was already signals that Anthem might fail this 2016 target year release. A demo was also in plans to be released so people could start playing it. But basically, BioWare wasn't ready also to put a demo back in the days that E3 was still a thing, and they wanted to do a formal presentation on E3 2017. And basically, they did presented the demo, or they acknowledged it, that the game was originally called Beyond, and then shows Anthem. Actually, Anthem was a backup name, was not the original. Wasn't the original game that was chosen, or the name that was chosen for the game. I'm sorry, I'm mixing up because I'm reading my notes here. So basically, the game was released, and during E3 2019, Electronic Arts did what they were supposed to do. They're basically needed to acknowledge all the problems that the people were having during the game's launch back in February 2019. And basically, it is all part because Electronic Arts refused to delay the game more time, and they don't want to pass February 2019 just for Electronic Arts have the sales of Anthem by their fourth quarter 2018 or end of the fiscal year quarterly report. And they knew that the game amassed some hype, and people like kind of calling it the Destiny competitor or the Destiny killer. I really dislike the notion. I rather prefer that Destiny motivated companies to make up their own game to actually have action RPG multiplayer to be playable. And basically, the game was released with many problems. Basically, I'm saying basically so much in this episode. I'll try to avoid saying so much basically because basically I'm getting tired of saying basically. Anyways, the game got released, And despite the graphical elements of the game were top notch, people could notice that the experience from the demo to the full release of the game was really different in terms of content, stability of the game, and inconsistency with technical aspect that people were obvious about it. They couldn't hide that BioWare was still with a lot to do in terms of the post-launch content and post-launch patches that the game needs, and that is why I think it was CEO Andrew Wilson spoke the state of Anthem during E3 2019, basically 2 years after having a demo being presented on E3. 2 years later, at the same E3 event, Electronic Arts had to acknowledge that they are aware that Anthem didn't get the expectation that people and gamers were having about the game. So a little while later, there was an attempt and a new project of BioWare to basically reconstruct the game. But unfortunately, the project was cut short back in February 2020, almost at the beginning of the pandemic saga, the whirlwind. BioWare said that they were ending the seasonal updates, but this was because they wanted to reboot the game, and there goes why I said the remake the game basically. Some has compared how Square Enix worked with Final Fantasy XIV with a revised version on 2013 after the initial failure of the 2010 release of Final Fantasy. Electronic Arts and BioWare felt that they could have the same energy or the same luck with redeveloping Anthem while the game was still active, but unfortunately, at the exactly second anniversary of the game, BioWare confirmed and sent blog posts that they're discontinuing any future work on Anthem, promising obviously that the game will maintain his server for the foreseeable future. We know that Electronic Arts is not friendly on having game servers for games that pass certain life or go through multiple generations. So I always took with a really big or small grain of salt about the continuity of these servers on Anthem. Because unfortunately, even if you're playing solo, you still need these servers for the game allocate the resources and also mapping where the objectives and the enemies are. And if you are in a live service game, it is obviously that you need the internet to know where other players are. Despite all that and this long story that I think I'm clocking the 12, 13 minutes of starting recording this segment, basically, the game hasn't died. Here we are, 2024. We are 3 years later after that announcement. The game hasn't died. There has been some attention about the Anthem community with certain outlets, gaming outlets, that they were reviewing that the game is actually being played. And every time that Electronic Arts makes some sales within PlayStation, Steam, or Xbox, or whatever you can buy the game, every time that there's a special pricing, including these $5 where I took advantage of the game, $5, I think it was on Christmas of 2022, and got the game available for playing for part of my initial content when I started in spring 2023. No, I missed the date. I'm sorry. It's not 2023. I bought the game in the Christmas of 2020, and by 2021 I was already playing the game, and obviously I took advantage and made it as initial content for my channel. So I really love the game. I love the game despite, yes, noticing some mishaps here, but I was really impressed how the game looks. It looks so good. I have the PC version thanks to my Game Pass Ultimate subscription, which allows me to play some EA Play games. I also have the Xbox One version that I haven't started yet, so maybe we can do a replay of the walkthrough and having like a challenge to have all my javelins being maxed up. That will be a great future content. But returning about the notice that many gaming outlets were having on the Anthem community, it is true the game refused to die, and some people, including myself, will love that BioWare pays some attention. I got in particular this article or this post in Reddit in the Anthem the Game subreddit, and the user that goes by OK Plenty 500 laid out some facts that people need to know or remember or finally learn about what truly happened to Anthem. Of course, that went already on public information and probably become general knowledge. This post at Reddit really motivated me to doing this whole segment, and I was originally tempted to do it as a simple episode, but I think I shouldn't stretch much outside of what I can really stretch about it. So, one of the points that people are always making about how troubleful was the development of Anthem is the Electronic Arts forced BioWare to use Frostbite. And according to the data, it's incorrect. BioWare using Frostbite, while encouraged by Electronic Arts, was entirely BioWare's own choice. It was our decision. Seth Line, I'm sorry, I'm reading the post on my perspective. I will read it as it is. It was our decision, Flynn told Kotaku in a recorded interview. We've been wrapping up Mass Effect 3 and we just shipped Dragon Age 2. We knew that our Eclipse engine that we shipped the Dragon Age 2 on was going to cut it for the future interaction of Dragon Age. It couldn't do open worlds. The render wasn't strong enough. Those were two big ones. We thought about multiplayer as well, as Eclipse was a single player only. We talked internally about three options. We could have burned down Eclipse and started something new internally. We could have gone in with Unreal Engine, or we could have picked Frostbite, which has shown some really promising results on the rendering side of things, and it was multiplayer enabled. So basically, this is incorrect talking points about the Anthem failures. So basically, BioWare's using a Frostbite was a planned thing, or it was constructing a whole new engine, or it was resorting on Epic Games with the Unreal Engine. Another point that it shouldn't be taken as a fact is that Electronic Arts forced BioWare to make Anthem a live service. It's incorrect. It was entirely BioWare's own choice to do Anthem as a multiplayer live service game. The irony here is that Electronic Arts respected BioWare too much and was too hands-off. This was a personal opinion about the author of this Reddit post, OK Plenty 500, and I'm going to read what they meant here. Quote, but former BioWare developer James Owen, who recently departed the studio after working on Anthem as a narrative director, said that BioWare was never pushed to make the game by Electronic Arts. Speaking to Game Informer, Olin stated that he knows that there's a lot of conspiracy theory that Electronic Arts is the one behind Anthem, but that was never been the case. BioWare always had a lot of control over the kind of games it makes. Going into more depth on the relationship between BioWare and Electronic Arts, Olin says that I think Electronic Arts really respect what BioWare brings to it. I think that this point was to acknowledge or pretty much saying that Electronic Arts is not enforcing their ways on their inner studio, or at least in the case of BioWare. Yeah, but there are stories about Electronic Arts that were not proven wrong, or there's no space on discarding those stories. But I think in the case of Anthem, we got some data here. Another point. Electronic Arts didn't give BioWare enough time to make the game and or tamper heavily with development. This was marked of incorrect. The poster said Electronic Arts was incredibly hands-off and only reviewed any part of the game twice. As once that tells to BioWare to add flying back into the game after BioWare stupidly took it out. EA gave BioWare almost 7 years to develop the game, and BioWare bleep, around doing nothing for almost 6 of those years. BioWare's managed was so incompetent, developers had literally breakdowns at works. Yeah, there's a link in a Kotaku article about that described that point. So at this particular topic of the Anthem Fallout, seems that it is a big one. Next point is Electronic Arts forced BioWare to give up on Anthem Next. Anthem Next is the code name for the project about redeveloping Anthem while the game was still alive and was going to be bring as a new patch. And future physical games will have just been the Anthem Next update. Of course, and I'm going to acknowledge and admit it, this particular point, I thought that it was a fact, but apparently it is not. Posters wrote, incorrect. BioWare found that trying to fix the game, especially during COVID, was just too difficult, so they wanted to drop the development. They wanted to instead focus all hands on saving Dragon Age Dreadful, their next upcoming game, which was also in development trouble. Electronic Arts board members met to decide what to do, whether to give up the game, force BioWare to continue, or give the game to another EA studio. Ultimately, after reviewing the 2.0 progress, EA decided it was for the best to allow BioWare to give up. And here's the quote. 2020 was a year unlike any others, however, and while we continue to make progress against all our games project that BioWare is working from home during the pandemic has an impact on our productivity, and not everything we had planned as a studio before COVID-19 can be accomplished without putting undue stress on our teams. Game developers is hard. Decisions like this are not easy. Moving forward, we need to laser focus on our efforts as a studio and strengthen the next Dragon Age and Mass Effect titles while continuing to provide quality updates to Star Wars The Old Republic. And basically, this is the main topics that the poster OK Plenty 500 make about clarifying some things that they were factually wrong. And maybe the community went too high on these stories that were not entirely true. And the last point about the Anthem Next being given up by BioWare, I thought that was a fact. Because I did read the blog arena when it was announced in February 2021. I think I was in a medical appointment, and I was still actively blogging in my own blog and another friend's blog, and I did read the blog post, but I found it so they weren't telling the truth or anything, but they were the way that you read the blog, at least I found it like they're just going the easy way out, man. And I couldn't blame him because Electronic Arts was probably on their asses, but we were proven wrong basically during this revelation. And basically Anthem was more of a mishap for BioWare rather than influences by Electronic Arts, which is a sad thing. Anthem has so much of a potential, and maybe things would have been different if Anthem Next could continue development. Maybe the pandemic was a big problem for many companies. And side note, maybe it is why companies are still resisting on going remote works, even if your job can be done and you can work from home 100% because of the part of productivity. Man, I wish that BioWare and Electronic Arts surprise us in the future soon. So if you're watching this on YouTube podcast, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button so you can support this gaming channel. And if you're listening the audio only version via Spotify and or Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Castbox, iHeartRadio, Overcast, Pocket Cast, or Radio Public, thank you so much for your support. This was Jesus of Jesus Gaming and Podcast. Have a good one, health, and success.